In this lesson, we're going to be modeling the roof slabs over the whole house. Now, to get this started, I do want to point out that we don't necessarily have a specific roof plan to work from. So what you're going to need to do is to look at the existing plans that you do have, namely the upper floor plan as well as the section, and you can also turn on the elevation that you have on the right here. And from these three drawings, you can then start to interpolate what the roof should look like. In other words, you have some information for the roof on this side, so you can see this large overhanging lip over here. You can see in this section what the roof, or at least where it is as you cut through it. And in this plan, you have a line which I'm going to trace for you now, which is this line here, which shows you a edge of the roof above the floor plan. So this is much more visible in your AutoCAD file, where it would be shown as a dotted dashed line indicating that something is happening above. So anyway, I'm going to go and trace this line using the spline, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on the slabs layer. You could also create a new layer called roof if you do like. I'm just going to call it slabs since it is a continuation of the slab system, and I'm going to now just trace this line for us. Once that is traced, you want to look in your front view and you want to move it up into the right height. And here already you will see that there is a slight discrepancy between the actual plan and the section. The section doesn't seem to show this overhang. It seems to show that there is a parapet that cuts the roof slab and basically has an ordinary roof just like we have happening on the garage. So very often this will happen in architectural sets, is that someone will be working on a section, somebody else will be working on a plan, and you'll see that the two don't really add up. Perhaps the person just copied the detail from here to speeden things up and didn't realize that there was something different happening. So that's the great thing about 3D, is that you can come in now and start making those changes to the actual design, and then you can go back and tell the architecture team or the people drafting the project that certain things need to be amended. So that's exactly what's happening in our scenario right now. So I have this outline, which is going to be the roof, and I'm going to add an extrude modifier to basically extrude it downwards, and it can be 25 centimeters. There's no problem there. And if I now look at the entire building, I can see that this looks fine, but I just need to modify some of the walls. These walls are a little bit too high since that was the top of the parapet. So let's go down now to this editable poly, and let's move it down by 25 millimeters so that it can sit just underneath this roof slab. So this will be 0.15. Let's double check that in plan view, and you can see that these lines are sitting over there. The other thing that you can start to do is where certain things overlap over each other, where certain faces are literally occupying the same space, you can start to modify those walls and slabs. For example, this wall here seems to be inside the other wall, so that means that this one needs to be moved back slightly so that it doesn't occupy the same space. So let's go and delete this, and let's take these vertices and move them backwards. And the same thing can then be done to the roof slab, where this wall will eventually be notched down so that they don't occupy the same space. So I'm going to move on to the rest of the building. We want to now model the roof for this entire area. So just like with all of the other elements on our project, you can either choose to start from scratch, or you can look whether there is an existing portion of the building that you can reuse, move, copy, and edit, and so forth. So I'm going to choose to use the ground floor, and this is because the ground floor has this extra bit of distance with a slab, and I want to have the top of the slab pretty much repeating that. If you don't want to necessarily cap these screens, in other words, if you don't want the slab to be above the screens, but you want the screens to go past the slab, then you would rather use the second floor level. So that's exactly what's happening here, is we have these screens going past the floor slabs. So instead of using the ground floor, it's actually a better idea just to use the upper level slabs. And I'm also going to choose to copy the balconies that we have here, because it is a good idea to have some sun shading over these balconies themselves. So this isn't necessarily shown in the elevation. Normally there should actually be a little protruding balcony. So these are parts that we may have overlooked when we did the actual CAD plans. And this does happen quite often because you're not necessarily thinking in 3D, but you're thinking in 2D, so you don't see things the same way. So I'm going to now, after having selected these objects, I'm going to type Control V on the keyboard, make a copy, OK, and move it upwards. So I'm going to move it actually way past the building so that we can clearly see what we're working with. Basically, we want to trim off, I can now go to the editable spline, we want to trim off this whole area. So the easiest way to do that is with an editable spline, because all you have to do very simply is just hit delete on your keyboard and your form regenerates. And that is why I love working with editable splines, is they are just extremely easy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this edge here and we're going to move it outwards to just overlap over this window frame. I'm actually going to take it all the way to there, and the same thing on this side. I'm going to take this edge and move it out just over that door. So here we see that the two aren't exactly in the right place, so we need to take the x coordinate of this one and just paste it into that position there. And that pretty much gets us into the right place. I also don't need this section here. That can be trimmed off as well. So back in the editable spline, we can just delete that whole spline from that. With that done, we can now look in our front view and we can start to move this object down to be at the right height, namely over there. And the other thing that you will see now is that this portion here in the middle actually is higher than the rest. So what we want to do is, let's go and modify that by taking this part, and I'm going to, holding down Shift, I'm going to move it upwards, and I'm going to then delete the portion below by just deleting some of these splines, and I'm going to actually have to cut and reshape, in other words, reattach these points. In other words, that's going to happen. This is going to get deleted as well, and these two are going to get deleted. But then I need to remember to actually complete the form, otherwise I won't have a solid object. I'm going to right click, choose Create Line, and I'm going to draw a line from this point to there, right click, and repeat that same command. So in other words, create line from there to there. Then just don't forget to weld those points. So select all the points that you need to have welded. And the same thing actually needs to happen here. We need to weld these two. So I'm going to right click and choose fuse and then weld. Same thing here. Select the two, right click, fuse, right click, weld. These ones as well we need to weld, so let's select them, right click, weld. These 2 points we don't need anymore, so let's delete them just to keep things nice and clean. And you'll see now once you release that you have a separate object which you can now adjust the height of in your front view. Just like so. Let's just leave it slightly lower. So now I'm choosing just to show it in the end result, and I'm going to move it downwards so that it's just above the window frame. And once I look at it in 3D, I can see exactly what we've created. So that is it for this lesson. We have gone and made all the roof slabs. We have looked at some of the spline editing work, in other words, deleting vertices, creating lines, and basically editing and reconfiguring these editable splines to make the roof slab from existing objects that we've already made for ourselves. And this often is much, much quicker, as you have seen, than actually doing everything from scratch, especially if you don't have the exact roof plan where you can very simply trace that outline in one go. So the next lesson we will look at some of the handrails, the balustrades that we have in this area, that area, and we'll also then later start modeling the pool and all of the other more architectural details that we have around our building. So thanks for watching this lesson.